All right, welcome back to another installment of the Wide Right podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic. It's Thursday, January 12th, right around 10 a.m. And got a new co-host here for this episode. That would be former Miami Hurricanes quarterback Malik Rosier, who's, of course, with QB Country. And Malik's been working with a lot of different quarterbacks across the country, including Miami's Tyler Van Dyke here for the last couple of years. And I thought, okay, this is sort of the perfect time to fit Malik in to talk about some of the offseason things that go on with quarterbacks and everything kind of going on in college football, because you were with the University of Georgia just a couple of years ago. And now, as David Pollack told Nick Saban on live TV,
They,
Georgia's running things around here.
I mean, that's the truth, though. I mean, they do run things. They haven't lost. They won 2 back-to-back natties. And at the end of the day, I think Nick Saban has to accept that. I don't think he wants to accept that, but I think he has to. And a lot of it just is recruiting. You know, you look at those guys, they're all big, they're all fast, they're all strong. So to me, it was just a great job by Kirby and the recruiting staff for year after year getting, top 3, top 5 recruiting classes so that, you can build that dynasty, because it's not about just having one good recruiting class. It's about consistency of, say, getting multiple so that, hey, there's gonna be some kids that leave, there's gonna be kids that don't pan out. But as long as you do your job, about 90% of the kids should be productive. That's one thing that I think Georgia's done a really good job of being selective about who they recruit, and obviously doing a good job of making sure that they can produce in the future.
And I think one thing we learned too about Georgia, right, is you don't need a 5-star quarterback to win a national championship. You can take a kid like Stetson Bennett and groom him and teach him and bring him along, and he can be the perfect fit for your offense if you got a bunch of 5 stars everywhere else on the field, right? Like if you can do it, I mean, you can coach guys up, and I think maybe this speaks also just to how well coached Georgia is, that you can take a guy who isn't the highest rated, who didn't have a ton of offers, but wanted to be at Georgia and is a program guy, and how that can affect your program.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Whenever I was there, I told Stetson before he had the starting job. This was when DeJuan Mathis was the starter, and I was like, dude, if you were about 6'1", you'd probably be the best quarterback in the SEC. So talent for Stetson was never the issue. When you hear Monken talk, it was really about one, a little bit was his size, like would he get balls batted? Because obviously most of the defensive linemen are 6'4". When it's 5'10" versus 6'4", it's a lot of batted balls. And then secondly, some of it was a little bit ball security. Like the kid can make the throws, so he'd make a lot of plays. But Stetson was someone that battled. I'll tell you this, a lot of people in that building believed in JT and DeJuan. Like DeJuan was the one that everyone liked. JT was the big kid from California that had all the talent. And you had the walk-on Stetson that was just battling day in, day out, was, going 8 for 10, 9 for 9, 8 for 7, or 7 for 8. And to me, that was a guy that just earned it. Like that job wasn't given to him. To be honest with you, I think that most of the coaches, like at some point, I don't say wanted him gone, but kind of wanted him out of his hairs, because he was that kid that was good enough to compete, but didn't look the part. You know what I mean? Like if he was 6'1", 6'2", there would have been no problem. But because he was a shorter guy, there was things that was going along with that, as well as obviously you have 2 scholarship kids with JT Daniels and DeJuan. So it's like, they're on scholarship. We got to give them their chance first. So obviously, it helps when you have 4 and 5 stars, but it helps whenever you have kids that are determined, that don't quit. I mean, I would say, like, I don't say Stetson reminds me of me, because obviously he has way more accolades than me. But he reminds me of myself into the sense is when someone told him no, he didn't accept it. You know what I mean? When Monken was like, nah, like we're gonna go with DeJuan over you, he wasn't like, okay, I'm a walk on, I'm gonna go walk on somewhere else. He said, no, I love Georgia, I want to be here, I want to compete. And look what he did. So, hats off to Stetson, but a lot of it was just him. Him versus himself. He had to fix his issues, and he had to prove to the staff that he deserved the job, and he did.
He did a tremendous job, and I know people are saying, oh, he's not going to get drafted high. They said the same thing about Tom Brady, and look at how long his career lasted, right? I mean, he was kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah, I don't know if he'll get drafted high. I think that he has to find a team that really likes him. But I think Stetson would be kind of like a Tim Tebow character, someone with high character, high values, high morals, brings a team along. I think that he obviously throws the ball a lot better than Tim Tebow. But I think that there'll be a team that wants him just because the kid's a winner. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when you have a team full of winners, most likely that team's going to win. When you have a team full of winners and you have 5 or 6 losers, guys, especially at, like, to me, a leadership position like a quarterback, it can bring down the team. And to me, Stetson's someone, whether he's playing or not, he always has a positive attitude. He's always trying to make his teammates better. So to me, he's a guy that, like, you want in the building. Like, I don't know if you heard Kirby Smart talk about his son, but he's like, his son, like, Kirby walked on his son crying, and his son was crying because Stetson was leaving. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of impact that the kid has, is that people that are around him generally like the kid. And to me, that's very, very hard to find. And obviously he's a competitor and he's a winner. So to me, like, I don't think he'll get drafted high, but I think there will be one team that takes a chance on him.
Yeah. Malik, let me kind of reset here a little bit because we got right into it and I love it. I love just talking football with you, but I want people to know a little bit more about you. We had you on the podcast before the season, right after I watched you and Tyler kind of go through a workout. Jakari Brown was there as well, working through his stuff. And but you work with quarterbacks. You've been on college staffs before. I mentioned Georgia previously, Miami. Obviously, you were there in I think 2020, right? With the Canes in 2019 with Georgia, and now you're with QB country. And part of the reason we brought you on too is because you're going to have your own podcast. I want to give you the platform to talk about that a little bit and when that might be coming along.
Yeah, appreciate you. I was actually trying to produce it yesterday. I did not realize how long audio editing, how long it takes. One thing that I'm really trying to clean up is my ums, buts, and likes. So I've been really going back through cleaning that up. It's funny. I have Rayshon Scott doing my intro. So a lot of the Miami fans, if you've heard Scotty talk, you'll know his voice. So he's doing my intro, and I got some music going along. So it'll be about sports. Won't specifically be about Miami. It'll be about just sports in general. I'll predominantly target offenses, how offenses attack defenses. I know this week's episode is about Georgia TCU. I did some stuff about quarterback breakdowns where I break down two quarterbacks, more on the intangible side. I think that a lot of people see quarterback from the tangible side. How many yards did he throw? What was his completion percentage, like X, Y, and Z? But to me, there's a lot of stuff that off the field that really affects a team that people don't understand, at least from like a football dynamic that I try to go over. And then I do some NFL picks. Obviously, there's the NFL playoffs, so I do a little picks and things like that. So it's real simple, just trying to get the word out. And obviously, I'll build off of it. But the schedule that I'm trying to set is the first of the week or the first of the month. I want to do an interview. So interview someone in business. So there'll be some business ties to it. And then basically every other week after that will be more football related. So it'll be a little bit of business, then mainly football.
Well, I'm definitely going to have to check it out. And what's the name of the podcast?
Just the Malik Rosier Show. Kept it simple. I'm not too creative. So I was like,
Gotcha.
Simple. And so that's what I came up with.
All right. Hey, I like it. Simplicity sometimes is the easiest thing, and people won't have any issues finding it. They just got to type your name into wherever they download their podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I'm using Buzzsprout, and right now it's supposed to go on Apple, Spotify. There's a list of like 8 to 12 different podcasts. I'll make sure whenever I drop the podcast that I link at all the different podcast sites as well.
Okay. We got some mailbag questions. Probably some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about anyway, but just to tease that for our listeners who are like, okay, when is he getting to my question? We will get to some of your questions. I have some of my own. I have some of my own here for Malik. Let's talk about TVD for a moment. Obviously not the kind of season he wanted, and there's a lot of reasons that played into that. No offensive line protection. I mean, a lot of pressure on him throughout the year. Guys were banged up. They had to play a lot of young guys on that offensive line, and then the receivers didn't replace Charleston Rambo and Mike Harley, two guys that were just highly productive. Colby Young showed us some flashes, made some great catches in that Virginia Tech game, and it felt like, okay, maybe this is going to turn the corner, but that's not what happened down the stretch. Tyler gets banged up, playing through injury. Just give me your thoughts on Tyler. You know, for our listeners who didn't listen to our previous podcast with you before the year, you spent a lot of time just talking football with him, you know, and kind of going through the mental hurdles and everything that a quarterback has to go through during a season. What was that season like for him, and what were you kind of telling him as he was going through it?
Yeah, I think it was definitely tough for Tyler. I think one, because of the standard that he set for himself. And I don't think it was to win any accolades. I think that day it was for him to go out there and just win football games. And obviously they weren't doing that. So I think that really hit Tyler. And obviously you said you had offensive linemen going down, you had receivers that were dropping footballs. And obviously I don't think a quarterback's going to verbally say, "Oh, that frustrates me," but you can definitely tell that it was frustrating him. I think it was something that a lot of people don't understand, that, confidence creates great players like Stetson. Like Stetson isn't, like, when you compare Tyler Van Dyke's physical ability to Stetson Bennett's physical ability, it's night and day. But because Stetson walked there every day and was confident, trusted his players, knew that those guys were going to make the plays, knew that the offensive line was going to make the blocks, like, that's easy to play football in. And that was something that, I had to tell Tyler, was like, whether it's a good pocket, whether it's a bad pocket, like, you got to sit in there, because you never know when it's going to be good or bad. And a lot of it was just like small mental stuff. Like, people still got to understand that, Tyler technically this year to me was really Tyler's like freshman season. Like last year he played, but no one really had like full year film on him. Like you see it all the time where guys, they play 1 year, second year, they struggle. That's because DCs, and I told Tyler, DCs are going to have all off season to sit there and watch every throw you were good at, every throw you were bad at, and every throw you were good at, they're going to try to take it away, whether it's a coverage, whether it's a player, whether it's whatever. That's what they do. They did it to me. A lot of the throws that I like to throw, they took it away from me from my junior to my senior year. And they're going to do the same thing this year. They're going to watch Gaddis. They're going to watch his offense. They're going to say, hey, inside this offense, what throws was Kyler comfortable with? And they're going to try to stop it. So every year, it's mental. It's an adjustment. It's saying, hey, how do I get better? How do I keep improving my game? Because if you think these DCs aren't spending all season watching Tyler Van Dyke and how to slow down this Miami offense, I mean, obviously we didn't put the numbers that we wanted, but they still know that we have talent. Mario Cristobal's doing a great job in recruiting. So I expect some of the young guys to get a lot of playing time. So I expect us to put up more points, hopefully, than what we did last year. So we'll see how basically Tyler, the offense, and these DCs adjust to everything that's going on.
Yeah, I'm gonna say these scary numbers for you again, Malik, just to inform our listeners of how bad things got. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it because it's responsible journalism here, right? To share what the facts are. These are the 2022 football stats versus FBS opponents. So this doesn't include Bethune-Cookman. This is just the I guess, what is it, 11 games against the FBS opponents. 19.4 points per game, 112th ranked offense, scoring offense. 5 yards per play, 5.03, which ranked 103rd. QB rating as a team, obviously this isn't just Tyler, but as a team, 94th, 123.59 QB rating. Only averaged 3.3 yards per carry, which was 109th on rushing. And then on third down, they were 81st. Red zone touchdown percentage, 119th. Gave up 3.27 sacks per game, so they were 113th. And as far as explosive plays, they were 106th with only 38 plays of 20 yards or more. Turned the ball over way too much. 122nd as an offense, turning the ball over against FBS opponents. 24 turnovers against FBS opponents. There's problems everywhere with this offense. I challenge you now, Malik. How do you fix some of this? How does Josh Gaddis, assuming he's the offensive coordinator going into the season, how does he fix this?
If I'm being honest, if I'm Gaddis, like in his shoes, I'm finding me a very trustworthy wide receiver assistant, and it probably needs to be a grad assistant. So you hire someone that's a receiver specific grad assistant. This all season, I'm teaching him everything that he needs to learn exactly how I know it. And then what I'm doing is during the film studies after the spring, is that I'm in the room with the quarterbacks. I feel like that's, and I know everyone has their opinions, but I feel like that's where Gaddis needs to be, because at the end of the day, like the quarterback has to be an extension of the offensive coordinator. And if you're spending, 80% of the meeting times with the receivers, well, I'm not with you. I can't get inside your brain. I can't last second ask you a question. So to me, there's some stuff like that I would change. And then secondly, I would just say tempo. At the end of the day, when you have guys that aren't as talented, when you have guys, and I won't say we don't have talent, but obviously we had guys that were dropping balls. We had guys that were offensive linemen that were young, that were getting thrown in there. I think the biggest thing that really helps teams is tempo, because a lot of times when you tempo teams, you can catch guys out of place. You catch guys standing up, you catch guys being tired. Sometimes when you slow it down, you give those bigger guys kind of a chance to reset, catch their breath. But if you're going 1, 2, 3, ball out, ball out, ball out, when those kids run sideline to sideline, they don't like it. I think that was one thing that Tennessee really did. That's one thing that Lashley really did. I don't think that, Lashley nor Tennessee's offense is crazy complex. I think they changed formations a little bit, and I think they just tempo the hell out of people. And to me, that's one thing that, when you have an offense that struggles, especially because you don't have the big bruisers like he had at Michigan, you can tell Mario's changing the type of offensive lineman that he's recruiting. So until you get those big guys, like play with speed, play fast, catch people off guard, get people out of position. And the only way to do that is really to tempo people. So that to me would be the second adjustment is, hey, how do I create tempo? Once I get my first down, we're going straight tempo. It's quick game. And you can even go 4 verts and do it at a quick game. Right. So there's different ways like that to really push the tempo. And I think that's something that, if I was him, that's the only adjustment I'd really have. I wouldn't change my offense. I wouldn't change like my strategy, because at the end of the day, like the offense works. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong that he's doing structurally. But I think if he tempos it, there's certain positions where we have a mismatch that tempo might be able to help them not get exposed as much.
Yeah. Miami went into you mentioned the recruiting aspect of it. They went to the transfer portal. They picked up a couple guys over the week, and they got 6 transfers now. But one of them, it was the starting center, Matt Lee for UCF for the last couple years, 3-year
Saw
starter. I
that.
think number 3 ranked in the PFF, Pro Football Focus, as far as his grade. They added Javian Cohen, who's a 2-year starter at Alabama. Those two pieces alone on the interior, what ways do you think that helps Miami? You saw some of the young linemen they threw out there, some of the guys that were banged up. I mean, just on the interior of the offensive line, how does that help a quarterback?
First, I just want to say that those guys have to get accepted. So I think that's one thing that, a lot of people say, oh, like they're really talented, but an offensive line isn't judged by just one person. You know what I mean? Like if the
Mm-hmm.
left guard misses a defensive lineman, then the sack goes on the entire offensive line. So to me, that's the first thing, is that those guys have to communicate. They have to gel. They have to be basically like one moving part. Like, I mean, obviously those guys are really talented. But I think that's the biggest thing, is they got to get accepted by the offensive line. I think they will. Obviously offensive linemen love each other. But I think that's a big part that people don't understand. Just because someone's talented, if he's not on cohesion, if I'm a center and my right and left guard aren't working with me, or they can't understand me, or if they don't trust me in my communication, you know what I mean? Then that's going to cause a sack. Like, I'll tell you, the funniest center that I ever had was Tyler Gauthier. So Tyler Gauthier was the one kid that he would set a protection, and I'd be like, no, Tyler, it's going to go right. And he would literally turn around and be like, okay, it's your funeral, set hut, and snap it. So that was something that was funny, but it's just like communication, like Tyler knew as soon as if I wanted to go left, or if he wanted to go left and I said, nah, we're going right, that even if he switched it, the offensive line, there was no questioning. It was, okay, we're switching it right. Like, we trust you, Tyler. That was because Tyler trusted me. So there's a lot of, especially when there's a centerpiece, there's a lot of communications, because he's usually the one calling the calls. Like, he is the leader of the offense. Obviously, he's a great player, which, I'm glad that we picked those guys up, because I think we need to help at the offensive line. But I think, him being able to actually lead that offensive line, that's going to be really hard, because, they're going to have to accept him as who he is. And like I said, the center's a leader. So like that to me is going to be a big, I wouldn't say off the field issue, but something that, could be super interesting to see how the offensive line gels with a new leader.
Yeah, because really it's been Ja'Kai Clark's unit for the last few years, and obviously Ja'Kai, he's playing through some bad ankles. I mean, he was banged up. He showed a lot of grit and heart. But when you bring in a new center, you're right. I mean, that is the guy that leads that room, and it'll be interesting to see how the relationships develop. Either way, Mario spent a lot of energy trying to fix this offensive line. And in the sense that I got from people I spoke to at the school was, if he had a better offensive line, the offense would have been a lot better. Tyler would have been able to throw the football, been able to accomplish so much more. Now, the one thing I do want to warn Miami fans about, and we talked a little bit about roster construction, right? Georgia going so deep on high school recruits, not the transfer portal, right? They want to set their own culture. It feels like Mario, I mean, 25 high school kids, 6 transfers. He's still operating. And I broke this down, my last podcast with Carlos Ledo. He's recruiting very much like in Alabama, like in Ohio State, like a established, program like Georgia, in the sense where he wants the high school guys to be the foundation, and the transfers are just sprinkled in. How do you think that affects chemistry? How does that sort of set culture when you kind of bring it in, through the youth and not transfers?
Yeah, I think that when you bring it through the youth, you really get to know who you have. A lot of these kids, when they're recruited out of high school, most of these guys, especially they're super talented, like they've been recruited since they were like 14 years old. So most of these staffs known for 3 or 4 years. They know who they are. They know their mom. They know their dad. They know everybody. When you go out to and obviously Alabama's a little different because he's been there, but like even like Central Florida, or maybe we go to West Virginia or somewhere, like you're almost guessing at the kind of kid you're bringing in. Yes, I might see his talent, but you don't know if West Virginia, when you call them, if they're going to tell you the truth about the kid is good or bad or indifferent. So to me, there's a lot of culture impact that, like, maybe you bring a grad transfer in that thinks he's going to start. No, he doesn't start, and now it's toxic. You know what I mean? And you don't know that kid is toxic if he doesn't play, because you didn't recruit the kid. You're just saying, hey, this kid was, a top whatever in defense alignment or receiver or DB, whatever position he is, and I'm bringing him in. So to me, I think that it makes it harder to really evaluate the chemistry of your locker room, because I promise you, I'd rather have 53 stars that worked 100% every day than 55 stars that did it 75%. Because at the end of the day, if you give me 4 years with those 3 stars that work 100%, they'll bypass those 5 stars, because everyone's talented in college. Everyone runs fast. Everyone has at least some type of size. The difference is that person that continuously gets better every day, whether it's 1% physically, whether it's 1% mentally, where it's taking care of my body. And to me, I think that's a big part that a lot of people don't understand is that, when you have these kids at 18 and by the time they get 24, if I can have them in my system, I can teach them, the right way to eat, the right way to take care of their body, the right way to rest. By the time they're 22, 23, the compound effect has made such a difference that now these kids are superstars. So I think that's a big thing that Mario understands is that, if I can get older guys that can buy me a year or two so my younger guys can get bigger, faster, stronger, that's the formula. It's not getting a whole bunch of seniors and barely the high school kids. It's getting the seniors that need to fill spots and then having your young guys develop, get bigger, stronger, faster during basically the season. So I know when I was there, we had Friday morning lifts. If you were a travel kid or you didn't redshirt, you didn't do that lift. But because I was a redshirt freshman, I had to do basically like a max squat, max bench lift. And that actually helped me get from 185 to 215 just in my freshman year. And I put on so much weight and so much mass, and it really helped me protect myself. So that's a big part too that, I know Mario understands that, but I want the fans to understand, if there's a freshman that isn't starting early, a lot of that has to do with talent. That kid needs to grow mentally, that kid needs to grow physically. It's things like that over time, really helps that kid get better.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the guys in this freshman class, you just look at some of the body types, right? Mario wanted to get more size on this roster, and kids like Francis Mauigoa, who I went and talked to in Bradenton before he graduated and left, 6'6", 300, 30 pounds, just a big, strong, physical kid. Samson Okunlola, the other 5-star offensive tackle, big body, 6'5", 305. These are all just kids that I don't want to say they're plug and play, but they're guys that aren't necessarily going to take long because they don't need to put on a ton of weight. They don't need to go through the physical because they've already got the body. That said, it still takes a big mental aspect to adjust to the college game and then to adjust to Mario coaching, right? Because right now he's your best friend. He wants you to come to Miami, but when he gets there, he's going to bust your ass. I guess my question to you is, you got to, you know several guys on this roster. What was the culture like this past season? How rough of a transition was it from Manny Diaz to Mario Cristobal, just from hey, there's a different guy leading the locker room, and how much of an adjustment was it really for some of these guys? It obviously didn't work out. There were some guys that left here because they just didn't fit.
Yeah, I think it was something to where Mario just wasn't playing games with anyone. I've been on coaching staffs where certain players made a mistake and coaches would kind of overlook it just because he was such a good athlete or XYZ, whatever it was. I think at the end of the day, Mario doesn't care. Mario has a standard, and whether you're the best athlete or you're the worst, you have to meet that standard. And I think that's really what happened. A lot of times when there's a coaching change, some kids really say, oh, this coach doesn't like me because now he's yelling at me or whatever the issue is. And so I feel like a lot of people mentally psych themselves out, and it affects their play. So hopefully that, over this next year, the kids that did stay can continuously build that bond, because that's really it. The team is going to take on the identity of the head coach or the offensive coordinator, the DC. That's just how college football works. And so I think that, a lot of the kids that weren't blue, I don't want to say even blue collar, just wasn't hardworking, just kids that just love the game of football. It's very easy when you love football to figure out who those kids are. You know what I mean? Because there's a different type of passion, different type of love that you have walking in that building every day. And I think that over time, those kids, it's not that they suck the life out of the team, but whenever you're someone that's high energy, that loves football, and people around you don't, it almost sucks the energy out of you. And I think that's one thing that Mario felt is if you're going to walk in this building, you're going to love it, you're going to appreciate it, you're going to come to work, you're going to bust your ass. And I think there were certain kids that just almost felt privileged to be there instead of being hey, I earned this, let me keep earning my spot every day. So I think that was one thing that Mario really had to tell these kids is that you continuously got to earn it. Yes, you're here, but just because you're here doesn't mean that you're going to stay here. And I think that's something that, it's at Georgia, it's at Alabama, it's at all the good conferences. You got to compete every day, every week, every year for your job.
So. I look at this roster and I still say, look, they've got 6 transfers. They've got a whole bunch of young guys. I still say this is a 5 to 7 win team as currently constructed. They still need a number 1 wide receiver.
They do.
They still need a defensive tackle that can replace some of the production Daryl Jackson did, helping Leonard Taylor in the middle there. I think cornerback, number 1 cornerback. I know they went out and they got Devontae Brown from UCF, who has a bunch of starts under his belt. I know there's Corey Couch, but Tyreek Stevenson was a different kind of number 1 cornerback for them. And even still, that secondary still gave up a boatload of plays. So there's some holes. When you look at this roster, what do you see as the biggest ingredients that are still missing?
I don't know. To me, I think that's really hard. I definitely think they need 1 or 2 receivers. I hope we get, and I don't want to mispronounce the name, but Deontay Thornton, the kid from Oregon.
Right. Yeah, he committed
Um,
to Tennessee recently. So
oh man,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that was one of the kids I really wanted.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I definitely think we need a receiver one, and then if we don't, I mean, and I would say this, I think that Kobe Young could be receiver one, but I think a lot of that has to do with how he progresses during this offseason. I think
Mhm.
he's big enough. I think he's fast enough. I think he's shown you that, he can be the guy. I think it's about him just saying, hey, I got to consistently be that guy day in, day out. Like, I can't take a day off. I can't take a play off. I can't do anything. So I definitely think we have enough talent to have us a wide receiver one. But I think having someone on the other side that, really creates a dynamic part could help. But I think with these receivers, I think they're fine. We still got Xavier Restrepo. And so
No,
I
we
think that
we got grinders. There's no doubt Miami's got grinders. I just think, people want to make the leap to beat a Georgia, right? You want to be a national championship program. I think from a, hey, what can this team really do? How many games can they win coming off a 5-7 season? I just think
yeah.
there's still some true number one guys that you're missing on this
Who,
roster.
who do we play? Let me look up. This. Does the schedule for next year already out? It should be out, right?
Well, the opponents are out. I mean, they've got Temple on the road in terms of non-conference. They've got Texas A&M at home, and I think they've got Miami of Ohio at home, and then Bethune-Cookman. Those are the 4 non-conference games. And then they've got I think
Yeah, I'm
NC
looking at it.
State, Louisville. You got it there in front of you.
Yeah, NC State. They should be NC. Louisville just lost their quarterback. Clemson, I don't know. Boston College, terrible. UNC will be good. Virginia, we should be Virginia. Georgia Tech. Honestly, I like Georgia Tech more and more. I
Mhm.
don't think they'll beat us, but I know Buster Faulkner. He is a great offensive mind, and so I think that game will be a little more interesting than most people think. I can't say we're losing to Florida State. Like, never. I'll accept that. Temple win. So, like, I mean, I honestly think that we'll win at least 7-8. I think there'll be maybe 1 or 2 that we might lose just because of I wouldn't say young guys, but you have to put some young guys
Injuries,
in there, something
depth
like
always play a
that.
factor, right?
So to me, like, I think as long as they do a really good job of maybe getting 1 or 2 defensive linemen, and continuously having this offensive line gel, I think they'll honestly be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna keep underselling him. See if that motivates him at all. See if that hey, this stupid sports writer keeps saying we're only gonna win 5-7 games. Whatever works to help turn the tide here, Malik. All right, I want to get to some mailbag questions because people were really excited that I was bringing you on the podcast, and I've requested some questions, and I know they want to ask you some. So I'm gonna just go through them here and get your thoughts. This is from Neo, who is at Capo the Bosses. That's how he spells it there on Twitter. He says, thinking big, but if TVD gets the throwing time that Stetson Bennett got, could he work his way back to a first round prospect? And as a QB, how valuable is 1 extra second?
1 extra second is I would say invaluable. Like, it has so much value that people don't understand between like the time that your brain gets to process, between the time that the receivers gets from one lane to another. Like, there are times where, like, you have to hit the guy out of the break, and if you're getting rushed, you don't have that extra second to actually let the guy or the receiver sink his hips and go left or turn right. And sometimes you're throwing it, and there's times where you want to, but you want to predict kind of where they're going. But if you get that extra second, you can slowly see their break, see their depth, and not kind of guess, hey, because I'm being rushed, I'm hoping that he's going to get his depth at 12. And sometimes kids go 10 instead of 12, and now the ball's a little overthrown because you were rushed. So I would say 1 second is huge. I will say that the biggest thing that I think Tyler has to do, and time will help, but I think it's just, find the checkdowns, do completions. Arm talent isn't his issue. I think it's going to be taking a team that, shouldn't win some games, and he has to be the reason why they win. Like, the big thing that I love about Max Duggan was that's what he did with TCU. Like, TCU maybe had 1 or 2 receivers. They had a good running back, good offensive line. But Max Duggan played out of his mind on most of the games that he won, throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns, a whole bunch of yards. When you talked about TCU, like, no one thought TCU was ever even going to come close to the college playoffs. And it's like, that's kind of what Tyler has to do. Tyler has to put this team on his shoulders and say, hey, like, I understand we're not the best. I understand that, we're not all 5 stars, but at the end of the day, like, I got to do my job. You guys got to catch it, and we got to win. So I think that's stuff that they got to figure out themselves. There's no perfect formula. Every team's different because every person on the team is different. That was like my big thing when we played, was that, I got with the older guys, well, not really me, but like all the older guys got together one day, and we were just like, dude, we're tired of losing. Like, I'm tired of losing Florida State. I'm tired of getting bashed by Miami fans. I'm tired of like going home mad, sad, angry as hell. Like Like whatever you got to do to win, do it. Like, I don't care what it is. I don't want you to talk about it, but whatever you haven't done these last 3 years that you're saying, hey, like, everyone has a New Year's resolution. Oh, I'm going to do this extra. I'm going to do that. Like whatever you saying to yourself that you needed to do, your ass needs to do it this year. And that was really it. It was us holding each other accountable. I feel like at some point this team has to do that, whether it's Tyler holding everyone accountable, whether it's Cameron Kitchens holding everyone accountable. It can't only be Mario. It can't only be the staff because they're not the ones playing. If there's a busted play, most of the time you see guys on the field talking to each other. And that to me is where like it has to be a player-led team. So
by the way, this is where I get to remind people you are still the only quarterback in the last 20 years to win 10 games at Miami. This is why they got to listen to what you just said.
I mean,
All right.
yeah, it's everybody. So
yeah. Well, you help raise that team to a different level. Obviously, turnovers help that team that you guys, but that 10-win team that made it to the ACC championship game had a good leader at the top who made plays, who made things happen when things broke down. And hey, kudos to you, brother, for
thank you.
being the only quarterback to do that in the last 2 decades here. This is from Armando Izaguirre, AY2Mondo on Twitter. How much better can we expect the passing and rushing offense to be with the improved offensive line?
I think they'll be somewhat better. I really, so how many years does that center and how many years does the Alabama transfer have? They have 2?
Cohen's been in college for 3 years already, and then Matthew Lee, I think this is going to be his 5th year coming up, so maybe a year left because of the COVID year. I don't know if he redshirted as a freshman as well, but I think between 1 and 2 years left for each of them.
Okay, I would say if they had 2 years this year, they'll be a little shaky. I think communication is going to be hard. I think that they're going to try to stick in some young guys late. Like I can definitely see Francis or even all the offensive tackle coming in late and trying to play. But I'll tell you, if we can keep that center and the Alabama transfer till the following year, I think the numbers would double from passing yards to rushing yards. I think that whenever you try to stick in we potentially have 3 or 4 new starters next year. I think it makes it very hard on communication. I think, having the guys on the same page is a lot different. So I would say I definitely think that the numbers will go up, but I don't expect it to be anything crazy. I'm hoping that the pass game goes up. Having Tyler in this offense for longer with the passing, having the receivers more comfortable with the routes and the depth and things like that. I do expect the pass game to get a little better. But I think run game to me is just mindset and mentality and just communication. So if one of those threes are off, then it makes it very hard. Because a lot of times in run game, you're having a guard center double to a backer, you're having a tight end tackle double to a safety. And all that is communication. It's hat placement, effort, and communication. So I think the communication factor could play a huge role on if Miami's offensive line struggles a little bit.
This is 2 questions here from Andrew V_17 on Twitter. Andrew says, does Malik know if Ryan Williams, Rashawn Scott, or James Coley have interest in returning to Miami?
I think all 3 do, to be honest with you. But I'll give you guys the heads up right now. Scotty is with me for the next couple months, so Scotty is off limits. Me and Scotty are building some companies together. And then I don't even think Scotty wants to do like receiver stuff. I think he wants to be strictly a recruiter. But yeah, I know those guys love Miami. I hope at some point they go back. I think it would be very interesting to see if Coley goes back, but I don't think Coley would go back unless he got like an offensive coordinator job there. So I don't even know if he would, but I know Ryan probably would. I know Ryan loves Miami. Obviously, he's a Miami guy. And I definitely think Rashawn Scott would too. But for now, I'm going to keep Rashawn Scott because we got some business work.
This is the second question from Andrew. What kind of offense would be best suited to our current personnel?
Super simple, high tempo, get the ball out of Tyler Van Dyke's hand as fast as possible. And then when you cross the 50-yard line, you take 1 to 2 shots, and then to me, you play for points. And I know people don't like that, but I think that, our offense wasn't successful last year. And I think that slow tempo, giving defenses time to really line up really hurt us. Like, I'm even down if they huddle, like do the sugar huddle, do what Georgia did. If you want to huddle, that's fine. You quick break, boom, run out, snap the ball, catch them off guard. To me, like, we have to do something, whether it's tempo, and I don't think formation changes are it. I don't think, scrapping his playbook and, importing a whole new one is going to save the day. But I think that throughout the game, if he can integrate, hey, every first down, at least for the next 2 or 3 plays, we're going to tempo. So it's inside zone, take a shot. And you can script that. So they know, hey, as soon as it's a first down, It's inside zone right, inside zone left, go take a shot. And you can do that, and you'll catch teams off guard because you're playing so fast that you'll catch kids looking to the sideline, trying to get the signal in, and your offense knows as soon as you get this first down, it's inside zone, outside zone fade. And so to me, it's stuff like that that you can integrate, that's super simple, that kids will know, that you can rep that over and over and over again at practice. So as soon as game hits, they know. And then you can change it next week. Maybe it's power right, power left, comeback. You know what I mean? You can change this
Yeah.
run, pass, and you can do whatever you want. But to me, it's that sense of like having the change of tempo really keeps people off guard. And I think that's one thing that if you watch Georgia tempoed the hell out of TCU. They didn't sit there and play big boy ball with them, even though they could. But the first two drives, they changed tempos on them, they changed formations on them. To me, that was really a good job by Monken, because not only did he have good players, but he used like basically his skill set and like, you know, the tempos to actually affect TCU as well.
This is from Larry Shender from Miami Media Associates. What does Malik think about our QB room, especially Jake and Jakari? Who will step up to be a true number 2 behind TVD? And he's got a follow-up question after that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I both have a different skill set. You know, I think that Jake is a more polished quarterback. Not saying that Jakari isn't a good one, but you know, Jake has a great quarterback coach with Danny Hernandez. So like football IQ, that kind of stuff, he understands. But I will say that the upside out of the two, the biggest upside is definitely Jakari. The kid's faster, the kid throws further, he has more athletic ability. But it's really about the guy, you know, that says, hey, like this whole offseason, I'm going to spend as much time as I can to understand this offense. And that's really what it's about. Like ability isn't their issue, size isn't their issue, football IQ isn't their issue. It's just, you know, the guy that's going to do right every play. And I think that sometimes with young guys, you know, they always want that big shot. But sometimes the best thing you can do is check it down 3 or 4 yards. So I think it's those guys that, you know, can show Mario, hey, I'm going to take care of the ball, number one. I'm not going to turn the ball over and put our team in a bad situation. But the next is going to be the guy, you know, that consistently have completions, do the right thing, make the right checks. So to me, it's just about the guy that cares the most, you know, who's going to take that time to really do the right thing.
I agree. I think, you know, it's what you put in the offseason that makes a difference as far as you evolving. I'll add my own little question in here before I get to his follow-up. What was it that Jake was struggling with? I mean, with the interceptions, the consistent, was he just making bad decisions? What do you think he was seeing? I mean, I know you weren't in the room, but just watching him, what do you think he was seeing when he was making some of those mistakes?
I think he was just predetermining. You know, sometimes what happens is like, you see quarters versus this play, and you throw it all the time. And that's the only time, hey, we're going to call this play versus quarter, because obviously practice is scripted.
Mm-hmm.
When you get in the game and you see quarters and you get all hyped, okay, I think it's quarters. And all of a sudden they start rocking and rolling. People, defensive linemen come in your face. And all of a sudden the throw that you thought you had, that guy's moved into that zone. So to me, I think some of it was just predetermining where he wanted the ball to go. And I think something, you know, sometimes guys say, hey, you know, I've watched, you know, Tua and Joe Burrow and all these guys throw these late bombs and hit guys running down the field late. And, you know, I think sometimes kids too try to make that hero spectacular play. And that I don't know if it was Jake in general, but I know a couple of times I think that Jake just got kind of lost in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Not that he was making bad decisions, but I think that he predetermined where he wanted the ball to go, which is very normal with young quarterbacks. Like I'll give an example of Nkosi his freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
So John Rick had an idea to mess with Nkosi. So Nkosi, we told him all day that like, hey, you know, when you see quarters, we're throwing the post. So I go first, I get quarters, I throw the post. Nkosi's rep, John goes, watch this. We told him to show quarters, rotate the cover 3. I bet you he throws the post. In cover 3, he throws the post. Now I will say this, Nkosi hit the post and it was a completion, but it was a fact that because what he saw pre-snap, he predetermined and didn't really understand what was going on post-snap. And obviously Coach has gotten a lot better. He's smart as hell now. You know, the guy's going to do great wherever he goes. But to me, it was a lot of that young mentality of, you know, not understanding, hey, these guys can still rock and roll. Like, don't predetermine where I want the ball to go. And I feel like that was some stuff that was happening to Jake.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously I know you work with Jakar. Are you still working with him quite a bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he won't be down until like the 15th. So whenever he gets back, we'll probably work at the end of January.
Okay. I was curious because there were moments, obviously, against Georgia Tech where he looked absolutely amazing, and he looked like a kid who was ready to step into somebody's shoes. Then the next couple of weeks, it seems like defense has obviously adjusted to him, right? They knew what he liked to do, as you said. It's kind of like baseball, right? Pitchers, the batters study them. They know what pitches are coming to sequence. It happened to him. The question by Larry Shender here from Miami Media Associates on Twitter says, can Jakari become an elite passer by 2024? When you project quarterbacks like a Jakari and he's getting used to the quarterback game in college, how long does it take? How long does that process take of maybe not just relying on predetermined reads, but actually being able to see exactly what the defense does?
I think Jakari, I think physically his mechanics will be fine by the end of 24. That's one thing that, I'm personally going to take on to really help him with is getting his mechanics down. But I think there's a huge part with the mental side of the game. So it doesn't matter if you have the best mechanics. That's something that he has to learn. And a lot of it is going to be between him and really Ponce. Ponce having to sit down and teach him, hey, versus this coverage, this is how we attack it. Cause that's not what I teach. You know what I mean? Obviously I know it, like I'm not dumb. I know X's and O's, but I don't want to teach him something that is not true. So I'll play like this, like mesh, like with Rick, it was always flat, flag, mesh, back. At Georgia, it was will, mesh, corner down. So it was the same route, same play, but different people read it differently. So that's why I don't really get into that. So I think the next step for him outside of, making sure all his mechanics are flawless is making sure that he knows every read. Whether I close my eyes, doesn't matter what coverage you call, I should be able to tell you what the weakness is in every coverage based on that play. And that's where he has to get. And so I think that could take him a year and a half. Obviously, he's learning the offense. So I think it's kind of the same thing. As much time as they can spend with Gaddis, with Ponce, in the playbook, watching film, closing their eyes, basically drawing it out in their head. To me, that's the biggest part that kids don't really focus on. Everyone wants to go out there and throw slants and throw fades and throw digs, and you know what I mean? And they want to post it on YouTube or Instagram of them, working, training out in the sand pit. Okay, cool, fine. But, when you have 15 seconds to think, do you know the play like the back of your hand? Do you know what the weaknesses in the offense or the defense or whatever position, special teams? To me, it's that side of the game that, the great ones really take their time. And you hear, like I think about the old guys, they always talked about Greentree was hard, but the way they studied film was crazy. Like they would look at the knee pads, like, hey, these guys have big knee pads. We're going at him all day. There was that attention to detail kind of in the film room that really helped them when they got on the field. Just play fast, play confident, and play smart. So to me, it's that side with both the young quarterbacks.
Okay. This is from Brian Haley _Brian Haley on Twitter. What's your take on name, image, and likeness and the Jaden Rashada situation that's currently playing out at Florida?
NIL, I love it. I think that they definitely need to regulate it. There needs to be ways that where both the school nor the kid can get held hostage by NIL, and I don't know how they're going to work that out. I do think there also should be a clause where like kids can't sign NIL deal until, maybe you minimize it. Hey, like a kid can't sign over $100,000 NIL deal till after 6 months on campus. So something like that to where, because I think about 4 and 5 stars. The only reason why they're getting offers is because they're a 4 and 5 star. People are trying to recruit them. If everyone said, hey, the maximum that this freshman can make is $100,000, then it's about who can actually recruit. What college do you want to go to? Because it's not like a bidding war. And I would say the biggest thing with Rashada is I don't blame him, to be honest with you. If this is from what I heard, if someone offered me multi-millions and they only came up with a third of it, then it's like, okay, like what other promises are not true? Like what else did you tell me that isn't real? So to me, it was kind of like that first, bad decision. And I'll say that, at least when I was in college, the colleges, they had all the power, you were kind of like at their mercy. And now I think it's kind of nice to where, now some of the players, especially like if you're good enough, you kind of have a little bit of power in your hand to where, like now schools can't just, I don't say lowball you, but like tell you something and all of a sudden back out like, oh yeah, like, that 3 million we offered you only have 800,000. Well, no, that's not what you told me. That's why I signed here. So to me, I am glad that, the players have some power, but I definitely hope that, you don't see a whole bunch of cases like this, because to me, that's not college football. College football is about getting education, going there to play with your brothers. The NFL, that's where it's, money negotiation, contract negotiation. So I hope that, they find a simpler way to kind of integrate, basically high school kids into college.
Well, the way I studied it, and I just spent a whole lot of time at the coaching convention and talking to different people about NIL and all different kinds of things. But the way I look at this whole Rashada situation, Malik, is you can tell a kid whatever they need to hear to get them to commit and to sign a national letter of intent, right? Because the way the rules are set up right now, the way it's supposed to work is you don't collect that paycheck, as you said, until you're officially on campus and a student. But the reality is schools can lie. And in Florida, if you just study the situation, it's real simple. They got DJ Lagway committed in the 2024 class. So do you think they're really going to pay Jaden Rashada multi-million-dollar deal when they've got another guy coming in right behind him? That's basically what happened here. And in the end, until the NCAA and everybody just decides, hey, these collectives, they're going to be working with the school and these things are going to be made public, and they maybe change the signing period. Like, in other words, hey, when you sign this NIL deal, you're officially signing a national letter of intent. Unless it becomes something like that, where the student, okay, this is the money they're guaranteed to sign. I think you're going to see situations like this continue to persist because these collectives and the individuals offering these NIL deals, let's face it, it is inducement. It is a bidding war, like you said. But until the rules and everything marry each other, you're going to continue to have situations like this. If Jaden Rashada had signed his NIL deal with Miami, who he was originally committed to, right? And at that point, he signed a national letter of intent. Miami's collective is now has to pay him that money, and he has to come to Miami. It becomes binding at that point. Until something becomes binding, it's just word of mouth. And unfortunately, the athletes are going to be the ones that get screwed over because the schools are going to move on and keep operating and doing what they need to do.
Yeah. And to me, I think that's one thing that I would say it's unfortunate as with Rashada, but I think that's one thing that's really coming to light is, now you're seeing, and some people ask me, like, why is this kid transferring? Why is he leaving after his freshman year? Well, you don't know what these coaches sat there and told their mom and dads on their couch. Hey, your son's going to start. There's no one competing against him. Like, he's going to get this amount of money. He's going to get X, Y, and Z. And they get there and like 75% of the promises that you offered me aren't even there. To me, I think that's a side that I would say I hope more people speak up about, because I think that those are really, really bad. Okay. All right, hold on, give me 30 seconds.
Yeah, no worries. It's just such an unfortunate situation. Like I think, again, there's gonna be more and more guys getting screwed with their NIL deals and being promised more money than they're actually getting once they actually get to campus. But it's a cutthroat business, man. It's just the way it is. And we'll be wrapping this up soon, Malik.
They
I
want
know
me to
you
move. Yeah,
sure.
they want me to move my truck from one side of the building because they're like got some construction going on out here.
Oh,
we got
okay.
like this new, Mike, one of my business partners, he has a new office. So apparently they're working on this side, so they want everyone to switch to the other.
I gotcha. Do your thing, brother. We can keep talking. This is the wide right on the move, man. This is interesting. All right, this question's from David Sims on Twitter. He says, would appreciate Malik's perspective on the QB room going into the 2023 season. It seems like a tight group, and I like Emory Williams. If he was the quarterback coach, what would he have each of the guys work on this offseason to elevate their game and better position the Canes for success?
So if I had to go,
we may have to re-record this little section here because we're losing you. I think it's from the internet signal of you having to move the truck. It's all right. I'll fill up this dead airspace for our listeners while you're on the move and we're losing the signal. Here's how I would answer that question, David, and I'm not a quarterback guru. I think there's going to be some movement one way or the other, right? Like right now, 4 quarterbacks seems like a big number to have on a team. Do I think somebody could potentially leave? Maybe. Will it happen this spring? I'm not sure. It really all just depends on what the coordinator situation, how that sort of plays out. Are there any changes to the coaching staff? Ultimately here, I think Tyler Van Dyke is the guy, and we did lose Malik, unfortunately. We lost the signal. Hopefully we can get back in here, but unfortunately we lost Malik Rosier. So I'm going to wrap this podcast up for now. I know you guys had some more questions for him. Had to move his car, man. We took too long to get to all your mailbag questions. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for Wide Right for this week's episode. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. Oh, wait, is he back? It looks like Malik's trying to get back in here. Can we get him? No, not happening. All right, I'm going to shut this one down. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to Wide Right. We'll be back with another episode next week.